All right, we are joined here today with head men's tennis coach Nick Ziezula. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, David. Great to be with you.
Just first question, easy question. Just let us know how you're adjusting to working at home and being with your family 24/7 now.
It's been it's been an interesting few weeks for sure. So we've got a recently turned 4-year-old and a recently turned 2-year-old at home, and so with my wife and I both trying to work from home most days, it's been a little challenging managing the two kiddos, keeping them occupied. But we've been trying to have fun and definitely enjoyed. Usually end of March and beginning of April, I'm on the road and don't really get to see the kids on the weekends and stuff like that. So trying to take advantage of the extra time at this age.
Yeah, obviously, getting some stuff done can be a little. There can be a few hitches in there. Just talk to us about a little bit of your social media presence. You've obviously had some funny posts on Facebook about working from home with kids and stuff like that, and obviously, also you've joined the TikTok movement. Just talk about that as well.
Yeah, so the first week that we were actually shut down from athletics, my wife, who's in charge of housing over at SUNY Broome, she was still having to go in every day for the first week. And so, she gets home at the end of the day and wants to know the report. Like when we go to daycare and drop the kids off, we get a full report. They ate this for lunch, they had this for breakfast. And I don't do a good job on remembering the little details like that. And so I started making a note in my phone and just jotting down, okay, this is what happened at breakfast, this is what happened at lunch, sort of thing. And just the hilarity of having toddlers, and you never know who's falling into what, knocking what over. And so those started to make their way into my notes. And I just kind of on a whim screenshotted the one and got a decent response in terms of people being entertained by it, and did that for the first week. And in the beginning, we all thought this was going to be, or at least a lot of people thought this was maybe a kind of a short bump in the road and not a 8-9 week thing and continuing on. And then the next thing I know, I got people when I didn't post saying, "Hey, why didn't you post yesterday?" And so it's kind of become my homework during quarantine. But it's been a fun to catalog what the kids have been up to during this time, and I'm sure it'll be a fun thing to look back on. And with the TikTok thing, my wife's staff had gotten into it a little bit, and so we were kind of messing around and having some laughs. And so we decided to do one with a little bit of school spirit and throw it just to have a little fun with the kids. So yeah, it's try to stay a little bit dabbling in the platforms as the generations ends up helping with recruiting. I had actually Share Verma, who just signed with us. As the first player, my first contact with him was through Snapchat. So little unconventional for me, but that was the first platform that somebody gave me contact information to get in touch with him after I had seen him compete. So try to stay in touch a little bit with what the next generations are doing.
Awesome. And yeah, talking about recruiting, just talk about kind of the future of the team. And you have some solid freshmen in there. You have Weeks, Verma coming in, Raw as well. Just talk about what you think you're going to see out of them in the near future.
Yeah, so really excited about this class. Josh Rowe Flannelly signed with us a couple months ago through coaching contact. Mark Finnegan, who did a great job at University of North Florida as a head coach, was at Memphis for a long time, was at Auburn. So he's back over coaching in Ireland, but he knows the ins and outs of the game and understands the team concept that we're looking for. And I've known Mark's teams and having competed against them, I know what he's instructing those high school players and juniors on. So it was really great to have somebody like that working with Josh. Super enthusiastic, real hard worker. He's had some good results playing a lot of French tournaments, but his best tennis is ahead of him, and that's really what we were looking for in this class is guys that are still really hungry, and Josh really has that. And then a little bit later in the game, so I mentioned Share. It was funny because I had actually seen him competing in Toronto back when I was recruiting Michael Palowitz. But the same thing, he was able to get in touch with the coaches and know, again, really experienced college player who knows what it takes to be successful in Division I tennis. And the connections with Michael and Dan, current Canadians on the roster, Noah and Share, and Noah and Kyle, and knowing their reputations and work ethics, both of them have had some great results, but have, for some reasons, not hit maybe the peak of their ranking of what they could have done. But knowing that they're healthy and excited coming into college, we're really excited to put them together with the returners that we have, and the work ethic and mentality that this group has is pretty special.
4 Canadians now. Is that by design, or has it kind of just trickled from Mike and Dan kind of down to these two?
Yeah, well, with recruiting, you got to throw a wide net, and you're following leads all the time. And then sometimes you make your own luck, and you get some bounces going your way. So wasn't necessarily planned, but I do like the fact that we're able to see a lot of those guys. We've been trying to, in terms of recruiting stuff, hitting markets where we really know the coaches, and Coach Ellis and I really have kind of thought about over the last couple of years exactly what our strategy is, and tweaked that a little bit from some of the decisions that I made early on in my tenure at Binghamton. And so the great part about these guys being just over the border is that I have, from my playing days and from coaching, I know a lot of the coaches. And anytime, no matter where in the world you're from or where in the United States you're from, if I'm able to connect with coaches, both who you've worked with and coaches you've maybe competed with or at rival academies, and able to get those kinds of references where they say, man, this guy is really known as a grinder, as a real hard worker, as a real great sportsman, then that goes a long way in terms of making those offers and making those decisions in the recruiting process. And so with all 4 of the Canadians, that really was the way that things went down. It was just the connections that I was able to have to really feel good about them coming in.
So obviously the semester is winding down now anyways, but just talk about maybe just how you've been keeping tabs with your current players as far as conditioning and keeping in shape and getting reps in during the spring.
Yeah, so it's been a learning process, like a lot of people learning the Zoom game, to be able to have a little bit of connection, trying to touch base with the guys individually through that medium on a weekly basis. Usually we have a little bit of an agenda of some things to go, whether it's getting registered for classes next semester, or checking in on academic progress right now, or physically what they've been able to do within, we've got people in different parts of the world. So being sure that they're being legal with, what's advised in their areas and things like that, and what's safe to do for their safety. But everybody wants to do something. And just, as athletes, Division I athletes, you're usually chomping at the bit to get out there and hit some balls or do something. So we've been touching base like that as a group before we got into our finals period. We had a really good stretch of meetings where on Monday we kind of pick a theme for the week, and on Monday I'd pick some content, some interviews or podcasts or whatnot, or TED Talks to listen to, and then have a little discussion on. And then on Friday, we had one of the returners would select the content and something that was within the theme of interest to them, and they would kind of lead the discussion. And so that was really interesting and fun to do. And we had some great conversations around that. And then we've been messing around with some other new technologies with a Slack account, and kind of experimenting with some different ways to communicate. And the guys were kind of throwing out some fun little physical challenges for themselves, whether it was push-ups or pull-ups or how long they could plank, and sending some videos back and forth for a little fun banter. So we're trying to experiment with some things that may help us in the fall and moving forward with some different mediums and different ways to conduct business. And I think that'll be really good, to always trying to find ways to be more efficient and respectful of our guys' time, because they get involved in a lot of things between their on-court and their academic pursuits. The more times that we can accomplish something without having to get together in a physical space. So messing with the Zoom meetings will be something that I think we continue with us as we move forward.
Awesome. Kind of transitioning into your team dynamic as far as that goes. Just talk about how kind of the spring semester unwinded and unwinded, and and just talk about how those dominoes fell with the MAC was a little bit before the America East as far as canceling seasons go, but as far as that spring semester kind of went for your team and with international students, with getting home and whatnot.
Yeah, it was a real roller coaster of a year. I thought we started out, not going into too much detail, but I think the fall we showed some promise with some some of the results from the freshmen, and the group had a good ITA result, advancing a couple people through the main draws, and Tiago and Michael picking up some big wins. And then we started with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement in January. We had a great week of preseason, and while our result against Brown was not what we were looking for, we were in that match for a while. The doubles point was close, and the singles matches, we had a bunch of 3-setters, and the first on 4 courts, the first hour and a half of that match, you had no idea which way it was going to go, which was really good because we've not had a good showing there the last couple of years. Then we got a bit unfortunate with some injuries and illness. Tiago busted up his ankle pretty bad, and Kushan, missed 5, 6, 7 matches right at the beginning of the year with a couple different things. And those are our senior captains who have played at the top of the lineup since the day they got here. But the flip side of that was the positive of being able to see some of the younger guys step up and see what they could do where they were really tested. And, with Michael and Dan coming in, we really thought that they would be playing 4, 5, 6 at the back of the lineup, the way things were shaping up roster wise. And then they ended up playing in the top 4, and Michael playing number 1. So it was a great experience for those guys. They really took advantage of those opportunities to play high in both the singles and the doubles. So record wise, we were not doing great, but the work ethic was there. And man, we put together, our last, we didn't know it at the time, but what ended up being our last road trip, a great win against Monmouth, who's been really dominant in the MAAC conference. And last year, I think, was in the top 10 of the region, which is basically usually just the Ivy Leagues and St. John's. And those guys have been a really strong program. So to get that win at their place with the kind of team effort that really took, and how intense that battle was from beginning to end was fantastic. And then we were getting ramped up to go to Buffalo, and the dominoes started to fall, and that was a really, really strange week. I've never had anything like that coaching wise, and trying to keep the guys focused. And gosh, it was Thursday morning was our last practice, and we got there at 8 a.m. and I was honest with the guys. I said, hey, this very well could be the way. I think the NBA had been canceled the night before, and so I said, realistically, this is going to be our last practice together. But hey, let's have fun, and let's have a good intense go. And so for two hours, we just went about our business, and the guys were fighting hard and playing, and and then that was it for the year.
Yeah. Obviously, Kushan was a hit match clincher there against Monmouth. Just touch maybe on your seniors and what they've done over the last 4 years.
Yeah, so it was Kushan was one of his great final matches that he had lost that first set and really had to dig down and battle back, and it was really fun watching him bring out, because he'd struggled a little bit in his senior year with the same drive and determination. That was always his big hallmark when he was on court, is his fight and how much he would get into the matches. And I think he was, partially dealing with some injuries, some illness, partially getting ready for the next step in his career moving forward. But man, he was really getting it back and hitting his strides. That was a great win from him. He had a great career. Furthest advancement, him and Thomas Caputo at the ITA Regionals his freshman year, made round of 16 quarterfinals, I think quarterfinals. Really great showing, and has consistently, from freshman year to senior, always played at or near the top of the lineup. And Tiago had, with the ankle injury, it was really sad to see, because senior year he was really hitting his stride and figuring some things out. We had a rough patch sophomore and junior year with really trying to find the balance between the coaching staff and him, and communication stuff. And and motivation and what was the best way for us to approach some situations. But as a senior co-captain, man, we were really hitting our stride and working well together, and it felt really bad for him. But his perspective on the whole injury situation was, I think, tremendous, and really he's put himself in a great situation for the next step in his life going into grad school with the lessons that he took from college athletics. But he had a huge win. That's hard. He'd been out for a while, hadn't really played, and then steps in and had to clinch with Michael the critical third doubles match against Monmouth in a tiebreaker. They saved I think a match point down that probably would have turned the tide of that whole match. And again, he had a great career coming in and playing high from the beginning to the end. And then Sebastian Quiros also will be graduating, who was in and out of the lineup at times, but man, could be an absolute solid grinder and just put just hundreds of balls in play. And just when he got in his zone competitive wise, I mean, he just wasn't going to miss. He was going to find another way to put that ball back in play. And so yeah, it was unfortunate for all three of those guys to not be able to finish out the path that we were on from a tennis perspective. But I know all three of those guys really learned a lot, and I learned a lot from them too, as a coach and as a manager moving forward, lessons that I'm going to take with me. And so I'm grateful for the 4 years that all three of those guys put into the program.
Yeah, Coach, you coach a lot of high character guys and kind of transitioning to off the court. Just talk about some of the services that your team does in the community and that you've kind of led them.
Yeah, so when I first got to Binghamton, I came in the middle of the year. So coming in January, you're like drinking from a fire hydrant in terms of all the stuff that's coming at you and the travel that we had and trying to catch up on recruiting. And so I really kind of had blinders on to just the little bit in front of me. And even through my first full year here was really focused on those things, and really into the end of my first year, really started to look at, man, we got to expand a little bit more on what we're doing, because if the college athletics experience is just about wins and losses on the court, then to me, it's a sad waste of resources in what can be a really powerful educational tool. And so we started to dive into a couple things and had some references. Ended up getting connected with the American Civic Association initially, which was really cool. Myra Garcia is the director there, executive director. They do a lot of amazing work for refugees and immigrant families in the area. And with us being traditionally such an international program, I thought that was a good place for us to start. We had some amazing experiences with them. We didn't necessarily have the numbers that we wanted in some of the initial programming, but man, having one of the stories I remember was an Iraqi refugee who had resettled in the Binghamton area. And we didn't know it at the time, and he was a little bit older. We were actually targeting younger children with the program that we were doing. And he was in his 20s, but it showed up. And so we were, playing a little tennis, and he had never really played before. And got to hear his story about helping the U.S. combat troops in Baghdad navigating the city and helping with caravans and getting people around. And I remember, never forget, having a team meeting after one of the sessions, and a couple of the guys were kind of, we're not getting the numbers of kids. And we talked about this young man's experience, and the guy sat there and said, man, I'm so grateful for not having to drive through a war zone, and really understood the privilege that they have of being able to be a Division I tennis player. It was a really powerful experience. So, that was great. And then we got hooked up with Jen O'Brien and the Magic Paintbrush Project and Creatable. And we've really dove into a lot of work with them, and now Amy Alexander over there. And they do a lot of programming for inclusive and adaptive sports programming. And so we've had a really tremendous learning experience with them, and dealing with children, dealing with all kinds of different things, and just being able to be included and feel that part of a team and feel the success of learning a new skill on court. And so that we've had a lot of powerful experiences through them. So as much as we started off with the goal to give back to the community, it's really a powerful learning tool for our guys and for the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, and obviously the athletic community knows about your team's service, but obviously the general community should know about that as well. Obviously, you don't do the work for recognition, but it is pretty important and pretty key to our community around here. So continuing on with that, just talk about your arrival back in Northeast a couple years ago from the South, and talk about your ties to the community and what you've done individually for the community as well.
Yeah, so when I grew up in Buffalo and played there, was an assistant coach there for a few years, and always knew that I love Buffalo, but I always knew I wanted to get out of the area for a little while and see something else. So was grateful to have the opportunity to work as an assistant coach at University of Central Florida with Bobby Cashman, who's a great mentor of mine. He really, man, I learned so much down there. Was there for 2 years, ended up getting married, and my wife and I started in Georgia Southern in Statesboro, Georgia, which is another great experience and fantastic place to be. But our goal was always to get back to the Northeast. Both of us are very close to their families, and got brothers, sisters, and nieces, nephews, all in the Western New York area. And so when the Binghamton position came open, that fit the first geographic barrier of what we were looking to break through. And then I had some ties to Binghamton. My junior coach had left Buffalo and actually moved to Binghamton for a time. And so I actually live right around the corner now from on Front Street, where my parents would ship me down for a little bit during the summer, and I'd crash at the coach's apartment right around the corner. So every day I drive by that, it's a fun reminder of the connections of being able to come back here, and knew Michael Stark, the owner up at the Binghamton Tennis Center from back in my junior days, and playing a bajillion matches up on the hill at his club. So in a way, even though I had never lived here full time, it was almost like a coming home opportunity. And it's great to be driving distance to see family on the weekend back in Buffalo.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talking about your family and things of that nature, just discuss with everyone kind of the trials and tribulations that you've had since you've come back up here, the year 2018 in particular that you discussed with me prior.
Yeah, so my sister, one of my sisters was born with cystic fibrosis, and so that really impacts your lungs, and as you get older, really becomes a burden to breathe, and lots of infections and things. And so I think it was 2013, she actually had a double lung transplant, and that was really difficult, coming back and forth from Statesboro to Pittsburgh at that time, where she was having operations. And the doctors, nurses, staff down there did an amazing job. And my sister has always been such an inspiration to me, because despite having to deal with all this stuff from an early age, we never complained about things. Always, everybody knew her for her smile and how happy she was, and energetic. She would play sports and get involved in a lot of things. And coming out of that surgery, it was a lot of the same exact mentality, on top of having to be super disciplined and regimented with everything to make the transplant work. And there's a lot of work that goes in to that after the fact. So that went well for a while. And then about 5 years later, she found out she needed a kidney transplant. And so she kind of knew that was coming. She does her research and kind of knew what to expect down the road. But for myself and my wife, we were a little bit surprised to hear that. And I don't even remember having a conversation. I think it was just, okay, yeah, we're going to sign up. And if I'm a match, we'll do it. So we started that whole process in the beginning of the year. And of course, like everything, you think you got a great plan, and okay, this is looking up. And I remember getting the call when I was in Cleveland with the guys. I was literally walking into the club. Our guys were in the middle of playing matches at the Invite there, and got the call that it was a perfect match, and we were going to start moving forward with a date and things like that. And I was thrilled, and remember like sobbing and having a meeting with the guys, really emotional. And then we had another hiccup in the road when they said, well, we found a spot on your lung, and we think you might have an issue. So I had to go through an operation just to clear that it wasn't anything, and it ended up not being a big deal at all, but they had to be sure that I was in perfect health for that. And so that bumped back the timeline of the surgery. And it ended up being scheduled 2 weeks after our son was born. And so that was a bit of a chaotic time,
Yeah.
trying to get through that, and Willem being born in Binghamton and then getting back to Buffalo. But we had so much family support and help at that time, which, was just tremendous. And we wouldn't have been able to do it without all that, and without my wife being open to dealing with that, 2 kids kind of on her own, because I was out of commission for a little bit after that surgery. But talk about a roller coaster of a story. Things ended up not going well. My sister ended up having another surgery. Fortunately, her husband was a match as well, and that one went much better. So she had made it about a year after our surgery, but her husband was able to step in and did just remarkable gift as well. And going through that, it's not an easy process at all. And now she's doing great and back to running and exercising and everything. So she's a real inspiration to me, and has always been in my life. So it was great for the opportunity to try and do something, and grateful for her husband, who was able to kind of finish the job where my kidney didn't quite get it done.
Absolutely. It's good to hear that she's doing well too. That's good to hear. Last thing is, we were both on a Zoom call a couple days ago, just discuss maybe the alumni that we're on, and the coaches take back 32 years of coaching of Binghamton tennis on the call as well, current players as well. Just talk about that meetup.
Yeah, that was so Neil Rohr graduated in the 70s, and he has been just an absolute inspiration to me, and keeping the brotherhood of Binghamton University men's tennis through all the generations together. He's a driving force behind. We had a big event at the U.S. Open last year, our homecoming events. So we had touched base about doing a virtual reunion, and he was all on board with that, very excited. And so then I started reaching out to some people, and I figured, hey, I'd give it a shot, reaching out to Coach Adam Cohen, who's now with the Ohio State women's program. He was very enthusiastic. He had just phenomenal teams here in the, I think, 9 years that he was coaching here at Binghamton, and him and I have maintained a bit of a friendship. So he was all on board with it, and he really did a great job of reaching out to his generation of players. And then Coach Stark, still being in the area, was very excited about it. We got Rick Heikemer involved, who was an assistant served a little bit of time with the women's team, but a long period with the men's team, and helped me out in my first year. So coaching staff was well represented. And then I think we had maybe 6 generations worth of players from graduates from the 70s, 90s, the 2000s, the 10s, and even the 20s, with Kushan Nath and Dan Pergel hopping on the call. So we traded some fond memories of road trips and matches and wins. But really impressive to hear what everybody's gone on to. And we had several different countries represented as well, but guys who are doctors, lawyers, business owners, a little bit of everything. So great to hear that they were all doing well as they've moved on from Binghamton.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Coach, for hopping on with us, and hope you enjoy your weekend, and thanks for joining us on this Zoom this Zoom call today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It was great to see your face, and always good to catch up with the staff who may be separated physically. Try to do our best to stay in contact and keep the Green Day Friday spirit going.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Coach.
Take care.